Hello everyone, welcome to yet another session with Doing Sociology. Today we have with us Dr. Subhangi Vaidya. She is with the School of Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies at IGNOU. Dr. Vaidya has researched and written in the areas of disability and gender and is the author of two books, Autism and the Family in Urban India, Looking Back, Looking Forward, Springer 2016, and Embodying Motherhood Perspectives from Contemporary India, Sage Yoda Press 2016, co-authored with Anu Aneja. She advocates for the rights of persons with disabilities and their families and is also engaged in awareness rising in the community. Ma'am, we welcome you to our platform and thank you from the bottom of our hearts for giving us time and opportunity to do this. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm really happy to be on this platform where one can interact with a large number of young scholars and people interested in sociology. So thank you so much for this.
Right. So, ma'am, we'll begin with a very preliminary question. You have been working on disability extensively for the past decades. How do you see disability being commonly understood in India, sociologically as well? And do you think there has been an evolvement in the category, over the years?
Well, actually, disability, wherever you sort of look at it, in whatever context you look at it, cross-culturally, you look at it through history, has always been a stigmatized category. I mean, a body or a mind that does not function as per socially acceptable or recognized norms has always been something that has been viewed at with suspicion, with hostility, with rejection, with shame, etc., etc. And this is actually very interesting when one considers that nowhere in the world and at no point of time has there been a situation where persons with disabilities have not existed. So disability is a universal and ubiquitous aspect of human experience. Nevertheless, the way it is shrouded in, these sort of layers of stigma, these layers of, rejection, is something which is also very, very interesting and something which, which is a fit area for sociological discussion. And within the Indian context, also persons with disabilities, whether visual impairments or hearing or limb deformities, etc., have always found a place, within society, but never as equal citizens, never as fully, incorporated citizens. So various terms are used to describe them, various epithets are used to describe them, and the notion within the Indian context, particularly of disability with identities like begging, for instance, is something that you see, all over. And also the notion of it being somewhat the product of flawed karma. This is something which is also very, very, ubiquitous. So as such, disability as a category is a highly stigmatized category, and it is only in recent years that disability studies and the disability rights movements, which grew globally, and India being no exception, actually looked at it as a category, on par, or, a category of difference, and discrimination, which needed intervention and which needed sociological analysis also.
Right. Thank you, for that answer, ma'am. My next question to you would be, something to do with social stigma. Could you tell us a little bit about social stigma and the othering of the people, with disease or disabilities, and how would you locate that in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic?
That's a very interesting question. See, stigma is something that has been very much a part of the sociological literature, right? From, if you look at, Goffman's famous work on stigma. And stigma being something in which, in a sense, a spoiled identity, which is actually the subtitle of his famous work. The othering of persons with disabilities is something that we see throughout, we see it in a very, very prominent way. And in this context, I'd like to say that certain kinds of disabilities are far more stigmatized than others. So, for instance, intellectual and developmental disabilities, or psychosocial disabilities, which are also known as mental illnesses. These categories are also particularly stigmatized, and the personhood of the individual is seen as in some way impaired or flawed. The individual is not seen as maybe a fully human person. There have been also a lot of debates on, the quality of life of persons with profound or severe disabilities. There have been a lot of discussions, on euthanasia, where people with profound disabilities, what kind of a quality of life do they enjoy? Is it even a life worth living? There have been several debates and discussions, in this context. And in the context of COVID-19, and that's a really good question. If you look at the way in which COVID-19 has turned, in a sense, sociality on its head, the fact that we are supposed to, not really engage in contact with each other, that we're supposed to stay within our own, small circle, the whole notion of contagion, the whole notion of something, of being able to catch disease or being able to catch some kind of infection from others. Persons with disabilities have really had a rough time in this regard. For instance, in any case, they are stigmatized. And on top of it, because of COVID, many of them have been deprived of the kind of essential services that they need. With the lockdown, with the shutdown of special schools, with the shutdown of so many facilities, you find that persons with disabilities are further confined to the four walls of the home. And also, certain kinds of disabilities, for instance, developmental disabilities, wherein the individuals may not be able to control, say, drooling, or may not be able to control certain, bodily expressions. These then tend to be further stigmatized. And the whole notion of care, I mean, what happens when a person with profound disabilities contracts COVID? Who is going to be, in a position to take care of that individual? How is this going to affect the everyday, functioning of the family within which that individual is located? So a whole lot of issues, a whole lot of extremely difficult and almost, I would say, intractable issues have come up in the context of COVID and in the context of stigma. Yeah.
Right. Thank you again, for throwing light on, how disability or people with disabilities, and their experiences in the pandemic. Now, my next question to you is, related to your own research, wherein a lot of it is being informed by your own experience as a mother with a child with autism. And so, given that, how do you navigate the personal and, the academic in your own research? If you could, tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So, of course, my interest in disability as an area of research, as an area of discussion, was certainly informed by my own experience as a parent, as you've rightly mentioned. However, I think that over the years, one has traversed quite a journey. I've traversed quite a journey with my young person, who has autism, who's now a young adult. And my engagement with disability studies as an academic discipline, my engagement with the disability rights movement, has certainly informed my own practices or my own understandings as a parent, as much as my understanding as a parent of the specific needs and requirements and subjectivity of my family member has informed my politics. So I think it's a give and take. However, as you rightly said, navigating these twin identities as a scholar and as an insider in some sense, it is a pretty tricky terrain, and that this is where one's entire skill as a social scientist, one's entire reflexivity. I think reflexivity is really the core, idea here. And also being deeply embedded or being deeply wedded to feminist epistemology and methodology, I think has played a very, very important role in my own development as both a scholar as well as a parent. And a lot of my work has been in the area of motherhood, in which I've critically interrogated, the way in which motherhood is constructed, the way motherhood is enacted, the kinds of expectations that are, part and parcel of the role, and how in the context of parenting a person with disabilities or a person who is different from the norm, profoundly impacts one's motherhood ideology and practices. So it is a work in progress, of course. With every day I learn more. Every day my twin identities as a scholar as well as a parent, enrich and inform and complicate, my other identities as well. Yeah. So it's not a finished project by any means.
Right, right. So, in the recent article that you've written on disability, gender, and identity,
Mm.
you also talk about the intersection of disability with other markers of identities,
Right.
be it caste, class, or gender. So,
Mm.
could you throw a little bit of light on how these intersectionalities work? What are the linkages between disability and these social categories?
So I think it's a very it's very important to look at any kind of social category or any kind of category of discrimination and difference in an intersectional perspective. There's absolutely no two ways about that. I mean, gender profoundly influences the experience of disability. Class profoundly influences the experience of disability. I mean, if you just look at the composition of persons with disabilities, you'll find that poverty and disability have a very strong interlinkage. Disability is a development related issue, right? So in situations where there is such a paucity of clean, safe drinking water, of basic primary health, of maternal and child health, naturally there are going to be disabling conditions, to a larger extent. However, it is also equally true that in developed society where longevity has increased considerably, age-related disabling conditions are also on the rise or are to be seen. So the connection between disability and class, disability and gender is something that has to be understood in order to understand any of these categories adequately. For instance, in the article that you have mentioned, the one that you have referred to, I'm looking at, for instance, autism and gender. And it's very interesting because it has been found that very often young girls and women who have autism spectrum disorder frequently tend to fall through the cracks of diagnosis. Frequently, they tend not to be diagnosed. And their autism tends to be, frequently seen as something else or hidden. And what is the connection really between gender and identifying a disabling condition? These are some of the things that I've explored in that particular article. And gender, of course, profoundly influences or profoundly structures and shapes the way in which the everyday life of a person with disability is lived out. So yes, intersectionality is indispensable, I think, in any kind of sociological analysis.
Right. You know, in your ethnography study on autism and family in Delhi,
Hmm.
you have looked at intellectual disability and identity. Could you briefly tell us, tell us about this work and what was your primary thesis?
So basically, this is my doctoral research, which I did in the Center for the Study of Social Systems in JNU under Professor Nilika Mehrotra. And this study was basically an ethnographic study of families with children or with a child with autism, and it was a Delhi-based study. So the primary goal of the study was basically to try and understand how families mobilize, personal, social, cultural resources to understand and to navigate the experience of having a child with disability in the family. So what I was trying to basically see is how within middle class urban families, the arrival of a child with disability, it completely topples the apple cart. So the entire aspirational, enterprise of the urban middle class family and the way children are seen in a sense as reflections of the family's prestige, reflections of the family's, they're really the currency by which the success of the family is measured in this sense. And so what does the arrival of a child with a disability do? And the specific disability that I was looking at in the study was autism, because autism, being a relatively lesser known condition, or rather it was at the time that I conducted my fieldwork, also created or also threw up a whole lot of very interesting issues about personhood. It threw up a very interesting set of questions about how sociality, how being social, how being a person is actually understood, how child development, typical or atypical, what are the constructions or understandings of typical or atypical development. It provided a kind of a window through which one could really unpack, or one could really see several processes in the sociology of the family, or see several processes in child development. or in our understanding of childhood, our understanding of what constitutes a typical child or what constitutes a typically developing child. Many of these issues really were thrown up at that point of time. It also raised very interesting issues about schooling. It raised issues about parenting and gender, very, very importantly, and the way in which the contemporary urban family, which in itself is in a state of flux and transition, wherein roles are being redefined, links with the extended family are probably dwindling, support structures are no longer as readily available. So even though what I was looking at was the occasion of a child's autism, this could equally, the findings could very much also apply to other kinds of situations of stress that the contemporary family is undergoing. For instance, questions of aging, questions of illness, many of these issues wherein the traditional supports that the family is supposed to provide, or the family has traditionally provided, or the extended kin group has provided, these are really under, are really crumbling with the onset of urbanization, industrialization, migration, families, the nucleation of families, and so on and so forth. So these were some of the issues that really came up in the course of the study. I also looked at siblinghood. That was something, because very often you find that studies which look at disabilities and family, very importantly tend to neglect siblingship. And in the Indian context, the issue of siblinghood is also something very, very important. And how in the contemporary context, the changing role of the sibling, could really sort of come through, it could really be, understood. So these were some of the issues that the study tackled. And subsequently, it came out as a book also in 2016 that you had mentioned in the introduction, Autism and the Family in Urban India, Looking Back, Looking Forward. One of the important things that I also looked at in the book and in the research, basically, was the role of NGOs, or the role of non-familial support systems. So in this context, I did a case study of a Delhi-based NGO which worked with the persons with autism and their family, and in a sense, how kinship, circles of kinship or circles of intimacy really extend now from outside the circle of the family and to other families who happen to find themselves in a similar situation. So Ginsberg and Rapp, Faye Ginsberg and Rainer Rapp's work also looked at the way in which kinship, is now a category that extends from beyond the family in the context of, disabilities, and, extends. So, how really the community can become a resource, or how the community can really, take over many of the functions that the family is not able to really discharge, in the context of social change. These were some of the issues that I looked at through my case study of an NGO.
Right. So, our last question would be about understanding media representations of disability and how you would understand them as a sociologist, and do you think that there have been evolutions in media representations of disability, particularly keeping in mind also the context of the current, global health pandemic that we are facing? So, if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So the media is a very rich sort of a mine, or a very rich kind of a resource, wherein one can really see the way in which understandings of disability find their expression. In fact, I have written a paper called The Other Within, which basically looks at understandings or representations of disability in popular Hindi cinema. So if you like, I can talk a little bit about that. So basically what I was, what is very interesting to see is that the notion of disability, as something that is a punishment, that is something as a, product of, some kind of a, karma, etc., which are notions that are very much present, in the social system, also find their way in media. But over a period of time, the understanding or the representation of disability we find is changing, is evolving. Of course, by no means is it a very nuanced one. There are still some stereotypes, or there are still some very specific ways in which disability is shown that is problematic, and which need to be, really unpacked, and which really need to be looked at in a very critical way. So for instance, we see in the last 10 years or so, a number of films have, been out there which attempt to show or which attempt to, highlight the issue of disability. So beginning with, the 2005 film Black, for instance, which gained huge critical acclaim and so on and so forth. Of course, what a lot of people also noticed about Black was the way in which, in a sense, the character of the deafblind disabled child, the girl in the film, was in a sense depicted in an almost as an almost subhuman creature, right? Who then had to be humanized by this person, who coincidentally happened to be a male. So it was almost, in a sense, a kind of a kind of a study in the way in which patriarchy, if you will, tries to crush or tries to tame or tries to, reform or tries to change, that which is seen as uncultured, that which is seen as, non-human. So this whole notion of the way in which the girl was subjected to some pretty brutal treatment also, including dunking her head into a fountain of water and so on, I think while a lot of people actually celebrated this film, I, as a person with, engaged in disability, found parts of it extremely difficult to swallow and extremely, hard to kind of, condone, if you will. Then also films like, for instance, Tare Zameen Par, which gained a great deal of popularity, which really shows a condition which is fairly widespread, probably in educational circles, but not a lot is known about, dyslexia, and the way in which this child with dyslexia is seen. Once again, it's a kind of a story about the contemporary middle class, right? Where academic achievements are really, a child's academic achievements are really seen as a marker of the family's prestige. So when this child is doing poorly in the school, it becomes a kind of a family disgrace. And therefore, he's packed off to a boarding school to reform him. And there he finds this very understanding teacher, et cetera, who then, helps him to find his own self, to find his own creative identity and so on. But once again, the problem here is that, this is a child who's got this extraordinary talent. And in a sense, it is this talent that redeems him. It's this talent that makes him stand out. So of course, the question arises, what about children who have difficulties but may not have this kind of a talent? What happens to them? So is it only, being, being special in the sense of having some great ability or some great qualities which others don't have? Is that the only way a person with disability can redeem themselves? And this brings me to a stereotype that is fairly common in the media, and particularly with regard to, autism. The notion of the autistic person as having some certain kinds of extraordinary abilities. And I think, the stereotype that this really came from is films like The Rain Man, which really is the first very, very popular film in Hollywood, which portrayed a person with autism. And this notion of, special savant abilities or skills is a stereotype which frequently is portrayed, comes across in media portrayals. And also, this entire, what we call, the super crip narrative, that a person who may be disabled, but because they do superhuman things, or through superhuman efforts, they're able to overcome, in a sense, the limitations or the stigma that their disability confers on them. So, the representation tends to really look at these kinds of stereotypes rather than looking at what an ordinary life of a person with a disability is, what an ordinary person with disability goes through. And in this context, another very important film that came across recently, which really intersects, takes the intersection between gender disability, and sexuality. For instance, Margarita with a Straw, which earned a lot of critical acclaim. That actually really, in a sense, stepped out of the comfort zone, if you will, and tackled some very important and some very difficult questions. But once again, I felt that it kind of fell victim to a certain kind of a stereotype. It fell victim to a certain kind of, a classed understanding of disability. So, well, representations, and in recent years, we are seeing a number of films which are representing disabled characters. Recently, there was a film called Hitchki, I think, which depicted a person with, a particular kind of a sensory disability. So there are more and more different kinds of disabilities. SPA film which showed progeria, it showed the trajectory of a young person with progeria, which is premature aging. So there are a number of films that are actually coming out and depicting various kinds of disabilities, and probably the depictions are getting more nuanced. But of course, there is a very, very long way to go, no doubt about it.
Right. So, we've come to the end of the interview, and from the entire Doing Sociology team, we really thank you, Dr. Vaidya, for taking time out today, taking time out from your busy schedule to do this interview with us and talking to us. And, you've talked about some of the very critical and, very important themes which students who wish to academically engage with disability, they would take a lot from this interview. And I'm sure they will go back and read a lot of your writings as well. And again, thank you so much for doing this interview with us.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure for me to share my thoughts with you, and thank you so much for inviting me on this forum.